The threatened tariffs go into effect worldwide. Trump, in turn, threatens a third term. Possible removal of federal funds for NPR and PBS. This is Dr. David D. Schein for Saving America with my own take on key stories from this past week focused on politics and business. And it's been a heck of a week, folks. The threatened tariffs go into effect worldwide. I watched Trump's press conference as he announced the well-publicized implementation of tariffs against the rest of the world. He referred to it as Liberation Day. As I've mentioned before, I would have preferred a much more targeted and reasoned approach. Many economists and other business experts agree with me. This is despite the obvious rationale stopping the rest of the world from taking advantage of the USA and its consumers. Trump indicated that the minimum tariff for goods brought into the U.S. would be 10%. And in turn, automobiles from around the world would be 25%, then 25% on imported auto parts starting in early May. He then showed a chart featuring some of the amazingly high tariffs being charged against various U.S. goods around the world. Generally, the retaliatory tariffs were half what the others were charging the U.S. I'm not sure how this would be fully retaliatory approach, but whatever it is, I can agree with the concept, even though I do not agree with the way this was handled. To be sure, every economist and business expert interviewed in the media sounded the alarm that this will, at least in the short run, cost consumers more money. Given how expensive cars already are, this is causing real heartburn with regard to autos, and it may also translate into higher housing prices with material costs being accelerated. Trump made a big deal out of 20 members of the Auto Workers Union being at his big presentation. He perhaps correctly has projected a renaissance for both the American auto industry and the steel and aluminum industries. That could be a positive long term for the United States. He then mirrored a major concern that I have. Many pharmaceuticals are no longer made in the U.S. This was revealed during the COVID supply crisis. I agree that it's critical that at least some of each basic level of supplies of pharmaceuticals must be made in the United States. In fairness, he did point out the amazing level of commitments for capital expenditures in the U.S. by major companies like Apple and Taiwan Semiconductor. Regarding these tech giants, this could help reduce America's dependence on the rest of the world. Long term, I expect that countries that are run by smart people are going to sit down and negotiate with the Trump administration. Going back to 1776, Adam Smith, in his famed Wealth of Nations, emphasized that countries should make what they do best. It is also called competitive advantage. The U.S. has a unique position since it makes many things well. However, we also have relatively high labor costs and costs of living relative to many other countries. One question I have had about all of this is whether the president can place, remove, or adjust tariffs without congressional approval. I sort of got my answer from GOP's Chuck Grassley. He has proposed a bill that would require Congress's approval of tariffs within 60 days after the president implements them, or they would then expire. Note that Grassley's Republican and claims his proposed bill would be bipartisan. I can see some merit to enacting such a bill. Running a massive government with executive orders is sloppy at best. The stock market investors, like usual, hate uncertainty, and the markets crash heavily after Trump's announcements. My usual stand is to, one, never give investment advice to anyone else, but I am also going to stand pat and expect the markets to get back to normal in the future. Nobody knows what that time frame will be, of course. Trump threatens a third term. I have to believe that Trump is deliberately punking the left-wing media with this bizarre announcement. I have previously expressed that Franklin Roosevelt did the most damage to the future of America by bloating the federal government. Shortly after being elected to his fourth term, he died. Later, a constitutional amendment was passed to limit the president to 2 terms. Frankly, this was a blown opportunity, as I am a huge proponent of term limits across the board, not just for the president. Trump hinted he might have a pathway to skirt the amendment. One suggestion I heard is that J.D. Vance would become president in 2028 with Trump as his VP candidate. My take on this is that Trump, who would be over 82 by the next election, needs to take his winnings and call it a career. He can run around and get interviewed like Newt Gingrich, who has not held office for a quarter century, but manages to get interviewed frequently. At least at the moment, J.D. Vance seems to have the upper hand for the GOP slot. I believe you'll see one of the strong GOP women for the VP slot. My pick would be Kristi Noem right now. I would also be happy with Marsha Blackburn. Possible removal of federal funds for NPR and PBS. In the interest of full disclosure, I got an important start in my adult life on nonprofit radio. I began with a show on arts and entertainment in Philadelphia early in my college life. The show was on Penn, University of Pennsylvania's FM station, which had a strong following. After about a year, the public radio station, WHYY-FM, asked me to move my show to their station, and I closed it out about 2 years later. It was a one-hour radio program with arts and theater reviews and interviews with many interesting people in the arts. As a result, I began an arts management business, which I ran for about 2.5 years while in college. 30 years later, I had another one-hour program, this time daily and on a regular AM station in Richmond, Virginia. That show covered employment matters. Since that time, I've been a guest on 2 different nonprofit radio and TV stations here in Houston. One is the PBS affiliate. So some may ask, how can I advocate to defund NPR and PBS? Well, it is because if they had kept the damn operation nonpartisan, I doubt any of us would have a complaint. However, it's turned into an extreme left operation that should not be for publicly funded operations. Further, the stations incessantly run fundraising campaigns, and the stations now include commercials, so they are capable of funding themselves. This is critical in a time of enormous national debt. Even a left-winger like Bill Maher has come out in favor of defunding NPR and PBS, and I do not expect Sesame Street and other popular programming to go away. Given their popularity, I'm sure there will be so-called sponsors, not advertisers. In a bit of good news, the FBI announced that it has in custody a top MS-13 gang leader. Joe Vargas Escobar, also known as Momia, within the gang, was arrested by agents in New York. He was brought before a federal magistrate in order to remain in custody and is then being transferred to Nevada. He is charged with racketeering and is associated with at least 11 murders. He reportedly ran the gang's Nevada and California operation. Note that he was in New York when arrested. So he ran to a state where he thought he could game the system. Well, the Trump administration has finally caught up with him after this ludicrous threat to public safety under the Biden-Harris administration. The FCC is investigating Disney and ABC over DEI practices. This was announced by Brendan Carr, chair of the Federal Communications Commission, that the entertainment giant is promoting invidious forms of DEI discrimination, referring to diversity, equity, and inclusion practices. From Carr's letter to Disney CEO Robert Iger, Carr stated that the FCC's Enforcement Bureau will review whether Disney or ABC have violated any FCC equal employment opportunity regulations. He added that the probe will apply to both past and current policies. Numerous reports indicate that Disney leadership went all in on invidious forms of DEI discrimination a few years ago, and apparently did so in a manner that infected many aspects of your company's decisions. In an expected move, Elon Musk announced that he will stop heading Doge in the next month. I believe this will be welcome news for stockholders in Tesla, such as myself. While Tesla stock surged late last year, has crashed with the ridiculous left-wing political campaign against Doge and his efforts to reduce government waste. In my opinion, every American should want less government waste. Apparently, Musk never committed to spend more time on Doge than he has already done. However, J.D. Vance announced that Musk will continue to be available as an advisor. An interesting article from the Heritage Society's The Charge newsletter contains some stunning statistics on how dependent the U.S. is on critical minerals from other countries. It indicates America is entirely dependent on imports for 15 critical minerals and more than 50% reliant on imports for an additional 29 minerals. Worse, much of the dependency is with our leading international opponent and threat, China. China, never our friend, is now blocking sales of some of these minerals. This is consistent with my concern about the U.S. dependence on pharmaceuticals. This also justifies Trump imposing a tariff of 54% on Chinese imports of these minerals in order to encourage alternative sources and hopefully domestic development. Some of those alternative sources are Ukraine and Greenland. This is Dr. David D. Schein. Thanks for joining me for this special edition of Saving America. Remember, a new Saving America show is aired on the Brushwood Media Network every Saturday at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Listen on any of the 16 network stations, Apple or Google mobile app, Apple CarPlay, TuneIn, Smart Speaker, and all smart TVs. Find more information at the brushwoodmedianetwork.com. Please be sure to join us each week. We welcome and love your feedback from our growing audience.